everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ansley and I've been living in Norway for the last 5 years, which is why for today's video I decided to discuss if you're living in Norway already or thinking about moving here, what would be better, to rent or to buy. In this video, as someone who has already rented multiple properties in Norway as well as bought property in Norway, we will be breaking down the real costs, the pros and the cons, and some real insights I myself have had about renting versus buying in Norway. So without further ado, let's get into it. First and foremost, let's discuss what it would be like to rent a property in Norway. Renting is very common in Norway, especially if you have just moved here, are a student, or unsure if you're going to stay here long term. When it comes to renting, there are plenty of websites and resources that you can access to find somewhere to live. If you're a student, I would recommend looking into SIO. SIO is a university housing company that offers discounted apartments all over the city to university students. There are a lot of different apartments to choose from in different locations and at different price points. You can pick an unfurnished studio apartment, a furnished dorm, a furnished apartment with roommates. The possibilities are endless. The typical prices for a SIO student apartment are anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 kroner a month. On the other hand, if you're not a student but are still looking into moving to Norway, I would look at websites such as finn.no or hybel.no to find places to rent. Finn is probably the best website to look into if you're planning on living by yourself and have a bit of a higher budget, whereas hybel.no is a great place if you want to live with roommates and want to move in pretty much immediately. Hybel.no is a site where people who are already renting an apartment in Oslo can put out a listing to recruit a roommate. A lot of the time they want someone to move in as quickly as possible, and the rent prices will be cheaper since you have so many roommates. Some things to know about renting an apartment in the Oslo area as a non-student is that a one-room bedroom apartment in central Oslo can run you anywhere from 13,000 to 20,000 kroner a month, whereas apartments with roommates can really vary based on the size of the unit and location and number of roommates. Most apartments require a security deposit of at least 1 to 2 months, and most rental units come unfurnished and with minimal appliances. Things like lighting, washing machines, dishwashing machines, and sometimes even fridges aren't included in a rental unit. You should also keep in mind that utilities will almost always be charged separately from your rental unit unless you reside in student housing. Some of the pros that come with renting a unit in Oslo or Norway as a whole are that you can be more flexible with when you move or where you live. The down payment is significantly less expensive. Landlords cover the majority of the maintenance costs. You can move pretty much immediately, especially if you have a unit with a lot of roommates. And it's probably the ideal choice for people on short-term stays or with temporary visas. Some of the cons of renting, however, are that rental prices have been rising quite drastically over the last couple of years. You also don't have a ton of control about your living situation. You can't do a ton of renovations, and a lot of places don't allow for pets. Leases can be quite short, sometimes only 6 months, especially for student housing. And the lack of appliances can be quite a hassle for someone who's moving into a place for the first time. Now, on the flip side of things, let's talk about buying a home in Norway. Now, while buying can be a great investment in Norway if you plan to stay here long term, it is a very difficult process that takes a lot of time. For example, you can't even start the buying process until you have something called a finansieringsbevis, or a pre-approval document for a loan from a Norwegian bank. Some things you should know about buying property in Norway are that buying an apartment or a house really far out in the suburbs will usually start between 5 to 6 million kroner. Some things you should know about buying in Norway are that apartments inside of Oslo can start at around 5 to 6 million kroner. Houses further out in the suburbs around Oslo will go for anywhere from 6 to 10 million kroner. When purchasing a home, you'll be required to put down at least 10% of the total cost of the home as a down payment, and there are always additional document fees, which are about 2.5% of the price of the home. In addition to all of these costs, buying property in Norway can be quite competitive, especially if you're looking to buy property in Oslo. But looking at the pros versus the cons, some of the pros of buying a property in Norway are building equity over time, you get a lot more stability, and can customize the house however you want. Norwegian homes, especially older ones, are really good quality that will last for a very long time. Over time, your mortgage will likely be less than rental prices that keep rising in the city, and overall, Norway is just a wonderful place to settle down in long term. A couple of cons of buying property in Norway, though, is the giant 10% minimum down payment on the property when you first move in, as well as higher interest rates around 5% lately. There's also all of the additional costs of maintenance that come with every home to keep in mind, and it's really hard to move as the selling process takes months and months and months, and even after you find find someone to buy your property, it can usually be 3 months between signing the purchase agreement and the person moving in. If you're still interested in buying property in Norway, be sure to check out my longer video all about how we bought our very first house here in Norway, as well as a step-by-step process on how to purchase property here. So in the end, what really is better, renting or buying in Norway? I think the answer really depends on your situation. If you're living in Norway on a short-term visa or here just studying, it's a really good idea to only look into renting property. The low risk, low upfront cost, and high flexibility is perfect for people in that situation. However, if you have a permanent job in Norway, plan to stay long-term, and have enough savings, buying is probably the way to go. Buying property is also a big trend in Norway, as the average age for a first-time home buyer is only 28 years old, which is significantly lower than a lot of other countries in the world. But regardless, you should still have a lot of savings before making a big decision like buying property in Norway, and make sure it's someplace that you see yourself living long term. From my own personal experience, the first 5 years I lived in Norway was just spent renting. The first 2 of those years I was a student, and the last 3 I've had a permanent job and have been working on saving up to buy property. I also am not purchasing the property completely by myself. Me and my fiance cumulatively have been working for a total of 8 years saving money to purchase our first home. So this definitely wasn't a spontaneous decision, and we have worked quite hard for a long time to be able to afford this. I would encourage anybody looking to buy property over renting to really take the time to save, think about what they want, and if they can see themselves living there for a very long time in the future, as this is one of the biggest life decisions anyone could ever make. That being said, I am very happy that we made the decision to purchase our forever home here in Norway, and I am so looking forward to moving into it very soon. So what do you think? Would you rather buy or rent property in Norway? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you are planning to buy, please check out my longer video all about how to buy property in Norway. But anyways, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in next week's video. Bye guys!